Welcome back to church school. I am excited, and I pray that the Lord bless this year of grace for you, that you can indeed grow in grace, grow into His image, and learn things that are going to be useful to you for your entire life. Okay, so we celebrated something special today. You saw, some of you were here, you saw us go around the church with the cross. And that cross represents what? What do you think? What's the cross represent? What is it a symbol of? What event are we celebrating today? Okay, so this is the day in the year 326 where they found the Holy Cross. Now, the cross that Jesus was crucified on in 33 AD was on the mountain or a hill called Golgotha outside the city gates. And so that's where they crucified people. So they put Jesus on the cross, and then Jesus died on the cross, and they took him off the cross. Now, what do you think happened to the cross after that? You don't know, right? And a lot of people don't know what happened to the cross after they took Jesus down. Well, there was on the outside of the city a trash pit, if you will. Kind of like what we would call a landfill. And they took the cross of Christ and the other two crosses of the robbers who were crucified on either side of him, and as they did with most of the instruments of their execution, when they were done with them, they threw them in the trash pit, along with all kinds of other garbage and refuse. Okay? So into the trash pit goes the cross of Christ. And that's where it stayed, the trash pit, for another 40 years. And then, in the year 70 AD, the Jews in Israel got in a big war with Rome. And they fought. And Rome came in and destroyed Jerusalem. They tore down the big temple. And all of the religious buildings in town, they destroyed so the Jews had no place to worship. And because Christianity by now was starting to catch some flame and was starting to grow, they erased all of the places that Christ had been and lived because they didn't want Christians to worship there either. So they took this place, Golgotha, and this pit where the cross was, they filled in the pit, and then they covered over Golgotha, and you know what they put on top of it? Anybody else know? They put idols, and they erected this big monument to the goddess Venus. Okay? So they put this big monument to a pagan goddess Venus. Okay, now, and that's where the cross sat there for 300 years. And we're going to fast forward now to the year 326 AD. Constantine the Great now has become the emperor of Rome. He has been converted to Christianity. His mother, Helen, was converted to Christianity. The sign of the cross helped Constantine in battle. If you know anything of his story, and someday on History State we'll talk about that. So he had this love for the cross, and he wanted to find it. He wanted to find the cross of Christ. And so his mother, Helen, who was 80 years old at the time, took the mission to go to Jerusalem and try to find it. And she asked around, and they knew that at some point it was thrown in the trash pit. They didn't know where it was. But there was a Hebrew man in Jerusalem. His name was Judas. Judas, remember now, was a common name. We associate it with Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed Christ. But Judas was a more common name. So there was this man named Judas who in his family had a written record of history. And in that written record, they detailed exactly where the cross was put. And he wasn't inclined to tell these people because he was a Jew. But eventually, through hunger and need, the Lord kind of worked on him. And so for a reward, he promised to tell Helen where this cross was. And so he took him to the spot and said, there, that's where you're going to find the cross of your Christ. And so reverently they dug the hole and they excavated that place and they found the 3 crosses. One of them was Christ's, and the 2 other were the robbers buried on either side of him. They didn't know which one Christ's was because the sign that said, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, was by itself, apart from it. And the patriarch at the time, his name was Macarius. Macarius knew that the Lord wouldn't allow them to find the cross without telling them which one it was. So full of faith, he told them, let's find somebody who's gravely ill. And they found this woman who was on her deathbed. She was ill. And they said, let's gently lay these crosses on this person and see what happens. They laid the one cross on the woman, and it had to be hard to do that because these crosses are huge, you know, they're heavy. They laid it on her, nothing happened. The second one, they laid it on her, nothing happened. The third one, as you can imagine, she recovered instantly, got up from the bed, and was full of life. And so they knew they had found the cross. And if that wasn't enough, if that miracle wasn't enough, as they were in the house doing that, a funeral procession was going by, and they had on the funeral bier the body of a man who had just died, and they were taking him to be buried. And so full of faith, Macarius said, let's do the same thing with this guy. Okay? And so they lowered the bier, and they laid the crosses on him, and guess what? The first 2, nothing happened. The third one, the man came back to life. So you can imagine, you know, especially for us, we're a little bit tainted because of all the special sci-fi and movies and things, you know, it's kind of hard to dazzle our eyes anymore. But for those people, oh my gosh, this person comes back from the dead. The whole town of Jerusalem was worshiping, reverencing this cross. And so the bishop, in order to give everybody, because there's thousands assembled at this point, to give everybody a chance to worship this cross, he goes up to a high place. They call these places in town ampons. And an ampon is just a raised place. Remember, they didn't have microphones like I do, so they had to build these platforms that people could speak to the public on. And so he went to an ampon in town and raised the cross. And they did this repeatedly. And when they would do that, the people would bow down reverently saying, Lord, have mercy. And that's where the tradition of our 100 Kyrie eleisons comes from. If you were here, you saw me going around, and I would bow down and raise the cross up. Bow down and raise it up, singing Kyrie eleison. By the time we were done singing all those Kyrie eleisons, we had a little over actually, but 100 Kyrie eleisons were sung. Also in that spot where they found the cross was this fragrant, flowering plant. And they didn't have a name for it at the time. Well, we have a name for it now. It's called basil. Basil plant. It's a favorite plant that was named because it's the plant of royalty. Because they found it in the cross of Christ. And so that's where the tradition of basil comes in the church. Why we have basil on this day, and I'll give everybody a little sprig of basil when we're done, so they can take it home and smell it. Now, where do you think the cross is now? Anybody want to guess? Matthew. Is it done? John. Markel. The cross of Christ is in a lot of different places in the world. What they did, Helen did, was she took a piece of the cross from Jerusalem. She took it back to Constantinople, where the patriarchate was. And so there's a piece of the cross in Constantinople. At some time, there was a piece of cross taken to Rome. There's a big piece of the cross in Jerusalem. And there are pieces of the cross throughout the entire Christian world. Because what you do is, for some reason, if I'm blessed to go to Jerusalem someday, and I'm allowed to go to the Holy Sepulchre, I can ask the priest here to give me a sliver of the cross. And he can give me a tiny little sliver, and I can bring it back so the actual cross of Christ can be with us here. I was blessed that when I was in Columbus as the assistant priest, we had a sliver of the cross. On this feast day, we'd bring out the actual cross of Christ. Can you believe that? And anytime somebody was sick or suffering, we could bring that cross out of them so they can emergency. And so the cross survived. It's in these centers of Christianity and indeed throughout the Christian world. The thing that I want to impress upon you, though, as the young people is, as hard as the world tried to stamp out the cross, tried to stamp out Christianity, it couldn't do it. Eventually, through grace, the cross was resurrected and raised just as we all are. And the world continues on. I'm sure you all know this. You're more exposed to it actually than I am. How the world tries to stamp out Christ on the cross. How uncomfortable it is for us to make the sign of the cross in public places. But just remember, they can't take that from you. That cross is in your hearts. When you're baptized, that cross was stamped on your forehead. It is our identity as Christians. It's the central fact of our faith. What the cross represents to us is not only the sacrifice that Christ made for us, but also it's the process by which we become like Him. We take all of our selfishness, all of our worldliness, we put it on that cross and we nail it to it so that we can be free. Can you imagine what a thing Christ has done to us now because of that cross? You have that cross in your heart. And when it comes time, when you feel the pressure of the world, you raise that cross. Exalt it. Nail your troubles to it. You'll never be able to take the cross out of your heart. They can destroy churches and they can kill priests and do everything else that you see them doing in the world, but they can't take Christianity out of your heart. Christianity will win. It will be the only human institution left on this earth because it's fueled by the grace that was won for us on the cross of Christ. May God bless this year of grace in the Lord for you. I look forward to hearing how your studies are going. And I'm so excited to be back and have this moment with you every Sunday. Thank you.